Yeah.
Okay, we're alive.
All right, so I am going to call this work session order.
Got excluded, yeah.
Is everybody ready? All right. The purpose of the work session is to go over and go through the city manager search, expectation, discussion. At this time, if this is a work session, there will be no public comment. But of course, the public is definitely welcome to listen in and hear what we have to say. And with that, of course, Robert is not in this part. I do want everybody to be honest, but in the same sense, be respectful, please. We are going to be probably talking about, what we expect and what we want to look forward to. Our city manager did a great job. I hope that we can find someone that has his talents, in some of the things, but there is some things that we all need help with, of course. But that is why we're going to do this work session, so we can sit down and discuss what we expect. And I do want to hear from the directors, because you people are going to be dealing with our new city manager every day to day. And so you're a great team, and I think if we can find another city manager to help guide our great team, we'll keep continuing to improving our city. And with that, I would like to introduce Richard Myers. I don't know if everybody has met him. He is the gentleman from GMP Consulting. And welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Last time you were just right there.
I was on the screen as a flat face. If I could ask to have some introductions.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
I've seen them in
Done
little
that.
tiny pictures on the flat screen before.
So we'll just start right next to you.
I'm Stacy Stockoff, I'm the city recorder.
I'm Joe Stallman, Stu Spence, Parks and Recreation Director.
Carrie Bushman, library director. Becky Tibbetts, HR.
Timothy Bishop, Economic Development.
Heather Regovich, Finance Director.
Kyle Carpenter, Public Works.
Gary Bell, Police Chief.
And Mike Boquist, Community Development Director.
So I will probably ask you again tomorrow, if we get to talk again tomorrow, because they're all new faces to me, and I'm trying to remember that. I want to start off with just a little bit outside the expectations first and go to the job description. In the job description, there's qualifications that are listed at the end, towards the end. And I wanted to verify if there's any other necessary job description that you want included, requirement in your publication. We'll be preparing the profile with the results of tonight, tomorrow, and collecting more information. I'm probably doing some more interviews or checking them over the next couple of weeks. The profile does two things. One, it sets up that basic criteria so that we can help screen out the day trader from New York that applies because he wants a new job. And help get some of that screened out so that we don't burden you with a lot of people that just don't meet the requirements. Mm-hmm. The other thing it does is it sets some of those other characteristics, and the work that the department heads have already done is great. And we want to look at that and talk about that, and I want to get some more input from the council as well. What you see is those expectations. What are some of the characteristics? A lot of the things we're looking at are going to be things that managers or department heads out in the world are going to have, but how do you want those to be a personal trait? How do we get an individual that's going to fit in the community? And you could have the best city manager candidate in the world, and I've seen really great city managers come in a community, and then they're gone in 4 months because they just didn't fit. But then they moved to the next city and they were there for another 12 years. So that's going to be an important part, is how do we match those personal traits to those skills. The third piece of the profile, I think, that's really important too, is we're going to be selling your community. We're going to be pushing that out to probably close to 3,000 people. And we want some of those city managers or department heads that are happy where they're at and see your brochure and say, oh, wow, I want to go there, and apply, even though they may not know that they want to apply right now. So those are the three purposes, and if we can try to mesh those together, and anything we can get from you to get those three purposes done is what we're trying to do. we're not gonna do it all tonight, we're not gonna probably do it all tomorrow morning and tomorrow throughout the day. I don't know how long I'm gonna be here tomorrow, what Carrie's arranged for me, but I'm gonna be here as long as it takes tomorrow to do that. Actually, I'm leaving Friday, so I'll be here all day. With that, on the education experience certificates, those things that are listed, is there anything else that you want to add?
Can I just pause for a second? I'm not seeing where you're referencing. I don't know that that's included in the packet.
Oh, you may not have that, so I will tell you what it says right now.
I thought you were talking just about these 2 pages.
No, I think you're referencing something
Yeah,
else.
Oh,
those are the things from the department heads.
Yeah.
Okay,
Education experience licenses, certificates that are required. One, it's required to have a bachelor's degree in public administration, business administration, urban planning, or a related field. That's what's required. And a master's degree in public administration is preferred. That's typical. You'll see that happen, and as we get the applications, you'll see some that are just bachelor's degree, but many of them have a master's degree, and that will set them above and make them a preferred candidate. 5 years of experience in city management. I have a question, what does that mean? And so I might ask for some clarification. What do you mean by experience in city management or related experience required and 10 years of experience is preferred? That's great for your size of city and your size of community and your department heads and the stuff you're doing. Yeah, 10 years would be the preferred thing. I think you really are hitting it on the head there. What do you mean by city management? Does that have to be in the city management office, an assistant or a city manager, or is it a department head as well?
Well, I personally prefer somebody who's been in the city management. However, it doesn't have to be necessarily city, it could be an accounting management or something else.
Yeah, okay. So some kind of management experience. If they're a
Yeah,
department
right.
head where they're managing other staff, maybe they're managing 2 or 3 departments,
Right.
that's okay.
right.
Any?
No, I agree. I agree.
So that's what I was thinking that you meant is it's progressive responsibility and management in the local government is really what you meant there, saying city manager.
Where did that come from? Do you know, is that from our last one?
I believe that is the
Adopted person, job description.
job description, yeah, we didn't realize that we were gonna have that, and I apologize, I probably.
What's the date of adoption on it?
It's on the very top
It's on
of
the
the front
top of the
page.
first page.
April 2022.
So it must have been when we hired, no.
No,
So
not
we
really.
redid all the job descriptions when we were going through that wage study
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Oh.
okay.
Right before the wage
and
study.
comp
yeah.
study.
Okay, so do we have a copy when we hired Robert of any brochure or anything that we did to, just to help him?
We can see if Becky can look in that, his
I mean, I don't know.
file.
I don't have one
I don't
anymore.
know.
Oh, okay.
Are you wanting a job description that we hired him with, or are you
Well, no,
wanting
just
the
some of the
announcement?
information that
Probably
we
the
had on the brochure.
Is that we asked more requirements of what we.
Well, that and what was on the brochure that we had.
To promote the city, I think,
For the
too,
city.
right, yeah.
That was,
Richard, how does,
I was like, I
What
don't know
you're
that we'll
seeing
have that. But we would have the job descriptions and as they have changed, or.
Okay, well, that's fine. I mean, this is the new job description then. Okay.
I mean, you have a better sense probably than we do. I mean, you see this with small cities, medium, larger cities. You've probably got more of a perspective on, what is appropriate. I mean, as you look at this, are we asking about the right amount for our size city? Are we shooting for the moon and we really need to pull that back in? Like, hey, it's, we're a city of 12,000. We probably should be asking for somebody with 10 years experience. But I mean, I think that's what we want. This is a full service city.
you're asking for
But
the typical stuff.
Okay.
You're right on.
perfect.
And that's why I wanted to clarify the city management part. And it's
Right.
more local government management is what it maybe should be. That it's not necessarily as the city manager, but it's management in local government.
Yeah, I think so, although, I mean, I think, if we're gonna pull somebody that's just been a department head of an isolated department, I don't know, I mean, I think we would probably want somebody that has at least some experience with something broader than a single department. Do you
That's
feel
what I
the
was,
same?
that's what I was saying, right.
I mean, it's a little different when you're overseeing multiple
Everything.
departments and the legal ramifications
An
associated
assistant.
there.
City manager or something.
Right,
Right.
somebody that has had at least some level of insight, I think, into
Yes.
that
Yeah.
upper echelon of management rather than just maybe an isolated department. I guess it's kind of my thought, is that?
I agree with that, because I think it was just a hit. They haven't had that experience of managing the whole group. We want somebody who has that experience.
I mean, what do you see as far as advancement? I mean, do you think it would be appropriate to just have somebody that's, you know, maybe, I mean, and I guess it's different, right? Like if we get somebody from Portland that managed the department in Portland, that, I mean, they arguably probably oversaw more administrative duties than our city manager did over the entire city.
Yeah,
So, I don't know.
and going a little smaller than that, if you got a department head from Salem or Corvallis, I mean, you're gonna have somebody who's got
Yeah.
a
Right.
greater amount
Experience,
of
yeah.
So
supervision.
maybe we do leave that open-ended, because depending on and that may depend on context. You know, if it's like Elgin, I oversaw Elgin's Parks and Rec, I don't know that I'm gonna, you know, that's probably not what we're looking for, but yeah, I mean, if it was a department head of a like size or larger.
Yeah, the other is showing and demonstrating some progressive responsibility.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe they started out as the library director in the city and they moved up to Parks and Recreation and library and something else. And,
Mixing the two.
That was brilliant. Whoa.
You don't know what you just did.
That's all right. Brilliant.
I think you went the other way around.
David, I'm not wanting to get out of turn here if you're not looking for input from directors
No, I
yet.
think we are.
However, I will tell you this in the vein of this conversation. I think with us, you have people who have subject matter expertise in our field. Now, I think a person's historical educational background could influence differently, but what I can tell you day in and day out operationally, there's some overlap in what's going on at the police department that I will interact with the city manager on, that might also have something to do with public works or parks. But more often than not, the city manager, they will start talking about something that's like, I have no idea. You know, but I can, if you're talking about like a department director that maybe has a really great resume, what I would offer to you is, it's like, I don't know the first thing about being a city manager, because I can tell you on public safety stuff, but when we start talking about other issues, that we definitely want our city manager to be well versed
You're of
in.
the opinion that maybe we need somebody with that upper echelon.
I agree.
of
That's what I'm
management
telling you.
experience, and
That's
maybe
what I
not
think.
isolated to a single department.
And that's what I said originally. That's what I think too.
I think that's a fair, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Then it says, any equivalent combination of experience and training which provides the knowledge and abilities necessary to perform the work. So it's, maybe they do have a bachelor's degree, but they've been doing it for 20 years. And there's another piece that you don't mention in here, and then I was going to throw this out. Do you want to have anything that says the ICMA credentialed manager certification is preferred? Or we'll just look at it if you get some of those that, hey, these are what we'll just throw in. Do we even want to say that in the profile?
What is, can you tell me
Yeah,
what
what is-
ICMA?
ICMA is the International City Management Association, and they have a program where managers can, and there's a lot of managers in Oregon that are credentialed. They go through and they take, basically it's a little test just to kind of evaluate, do they follow the ethics? Do they know what the ethics rules are from ICMA? And how do they interact? Are they working on a regular program of enhancing and strengthening their skills? Robert's not credentialed, I'm not credentialed, but it's one of those things that's a newer feature of ICMA. Doesn't necessarily you're getting a good manager, but it means you're getting a manager that is paying particular attention to making sure that they are up to speed on new things.
So how did you say that? Like maybe.
Would you say preferred?
If you leave it out, you'll get some, and they'll put it on their resume, and then we can leave that and just say, hey, we'll look at those when they come. Or do you want to say you would prefer one? I mean,
Just a point of clarification, when we score applications, and you might do it differently, so share if you do, but when you put things like required, they get extra points. And then if it's preferred, they get more points. And if they don't have that, right, then they get less points. So it's a way to earn points Versus if it wasn't in there, then you probably couldn't use it as a point incentive. So if it was left out, if they had one, they still would get 0 points for that.
Yeah,
Even though,
I see.
because it wasn't in the criteria, right?
So if you
So
say
maybe you do that differently.
Yeah, and we try to, because of Oregon's veterans preference laws, we try not to use points. But we rate them in the categories. And those would be something that we note, just like if, somebody has, they're a member of GFOA or they have extra training in other areas, we'll put those in the information, but we don't give points for any of it, yeah.
Are there equivalent certificates out there? So if we said we would prefer this or something equivalent, is that?
The ICMA credentialing is the only thing out there.
Okay.
I think if you say you didn't have it, Robert didn't have it, that tells me, I don't know. I mean, sometimes those things get crafted and then they just never permeate. Or if we're gonna miss somebody that's got, 15 years experience and that's gonna rank somebody else ahead of them just because they have some, little credential, to me, the experience would speak more highly than that.
And that's why Robert doesn't have it.
Yeah. Right.
We've been experienced and we just said, no, it's not worth our time. We're close to retirement when they brought it out. And, why go through the extra effort? We were doing the trainings and other things as well. But it might be something that you just keep in the back of your mind that as we have an applicant that comes in and they are credentialed, you can ask them questions about it in the interview. Good. I just want to touch a little bit on the salary because when we get into the actual process with candidates, you can't talk about it anymore in executive session. We can talk about it in public meeting here because we're not talking specifically about any candidate. You have a good range set up. Your compensation study that you did in 23, where you started it in 23, is set up really well. There is a question because you have the adjustment for range 23 is changing to range 24 on December 31st of this year. That will be 4 months after the new manager starts. You may want to, and this is something that we'd make clear to them either in the application process or through the whole process. We figure out a way to write it into the profile, but that you may want to move that date for that new manager, just for that manager position, to maybe 6 months out from being hired, rather than making that automatic adjustment. If you do make that adjustment in December, what you could do is, let's say you got somebody who had all the preferred stuff, was 15 years of qualifications, and you put him in at range 23, step 4, because they were well above your minimums. You'd want to do the minimums in 1, 2, and 3, and then if somebody's really good, you'd go to 4, and probably not much higher than that. And that's probably what you guys have heard from the manager, from your manager already when you hire people. Don't go above that point. But then when you make that change, if you did do it in December, they would maybe change to a 24-3, which is the same number, the same salary until you make the adjustment in 6 months. So, you could do either one of those. But that'd be something, I think your numbers are great. They line up with the other cities that we're looking at right now and doing, and the others that have just announced. And especially with the adjustment that would come with stepping to 24. So I think you're okay there. But that would be something to make sure that if you get a final candidate, they've got 5 years of experience, they've got a bachelor's degree, then they probably will be a 1 or 2, just as you look at that range situation. So.
When we did that comp study, that's kind of how we set it up, is ranges, or steps 1 through 3 are kind of the starting point based on experience, education, and then it went up from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we hire in at steps 1 through 3.
Yeah, and then your 4 through everything else is based on tenure here at LeGrand rather than somewhere else. Yeah, good. You did a great job with that.
So do you like the 6 months? I mean, everybody, any job you go to, you have probation.
Probation period, yeah.
You have to prove there.
And that's kind of what the December is if you've successfully completed your evaluation, then you get that in December. So
there's a question is, if you do that, is that going to throw off one employee is going to be a weird time if everybody's doing it December.
No, because I think it'll be year 3, which is the last of the wage adjustment, and from then on, it goes on your evaluation date. Is how it happens.
So that would work to make an adjustment on the 6 month then.
I think all of this is captured within our employee handbook and policy. You could probably speak a little bit more to it.
Good.
Yeah, for this year, when there were several people that were still on probation and we went ahead and continued to move them, if at that point they were fully competent in their roles. Because we looked at it more as we were trying to align, it was a market alignment versus a performance adjustment.
So is that a decision that we could make later on, or is that something that requires like a formal motion, do you know?
I think it's in your compensation study, the way it's set up. I think it's all done. And just wanted to make sure you
So
were aware.
we could kind of revisit that based on what happened.
I think it's set up in there.
I think it's a good thing to be aware of, though.
The way we did it before, which, I mean, the council being the direct supervisor for the city manager, so the department directors or supervisors of the affected employees had to, report, if you will, in writing, whether or not that individual was meeting all of the competencies and essential functions of their position at that time. So I believe that same should apply, and you could decide if the new employee, the new manager was meeting those things, those criterion at that period in time.
Okay, so that would be in December, right? So what if they weren't meeting it? I'm gonna say right now, if somebody wasn't meeting it, could they meet it in January or February? So you could just adjust that time. Okay, that's what okay,
That would probably
Their
be something
probation-
to
the
do in
probationary-
executive session.
yeah, right, yeah.
The probationary period would still apply, it just,
Okay.
yeah.
Just whenever they hit that.
But I think this is part of that. We would just probably plan an executive session around that time to discuss.
Do an evaluation.
Yeah.
Good. So when we move through the process and we get to the point of here's your final candidates and you have your interviews and the panels and you look through all that information, you're going to have to, by setting up these standards, you can have an executive session to look at those criteria. But during the executive sessions, you cannot talk about compensation at all.
Yeah.
And Oregon's weird. I mean, you can talk about what you're going to pay for a piece of property in executive session, but you can't talk about compensation in executive session. So wanted to make sure you were well aware of what your compensation plan does say, so that you can come out of executive session and make an offer without talking about it and saying, because of experience and because of education, we want to go step 2 or 1 or 3, and just go like that with your offer and not have to talk about it in the executive session. Great. That's the logistical and technical stuff. Now to the mushy, soft, what do you want? And let's go through the department head list. That's not it.
Hey, at the risk of taking a step back though, what about any, in that final offer for any compensation for like relocating expenses, things like that?
Yeah, those will be items that we'll need to visit about. And we can talk about those now. But it's going to depend on where people are coming from.
Yeah.
And, qualifications and things like that. Right now, your relocation is ranging anywhere from a very low offer of $5,000 to $10,000, $15,000 for relocation expenses. Some places are doing a bonus, but usually you're not seeing that, not in city management positions. One of the other things you may want to consider is the vehicle allowance rather than the 2009 hybrid car.
Comes with the deal.
No one else will take it.
You get what you got.
We got a new place.
It's only got 46,000 miles on it, but yeah.
So Richard, is that a normal thing to give relocation funding? Is that part of the package?
And there's multiple ways of doing that. You can do we'll reimburse you for expenses up to a certain point, but then that means then they've got to turn in expenses that qualify under the IRS rules for
Right.
relocation expenses, and it goes to a certain point. You can also do, here's just $5,000 for relocation, and you can use it however for your relocation expenses. So those would be things that you need to think about. How do you want to do that part and those pieces? Another piece in the compensation is if you're getting a manager from another jurisdiction, they're leaving with sick leave and or paid time off and vacation. And they may actually have a vacation planned in January or something like that before you're allowing a vacation under your normal rules. You may need to look at some of those things. Those would be things you need to talk about too. Do you need to do those right now? I think you can wait and do those in a regular meeting.
Right.
Because what we'll do is we'll go to the applicant, if you pick a final one, we'll go to them and say, here's the basic stuff. This is where you'd fit in salary. This is this. What else do you need? What else is there that you'd want? And then we'd come back and say, here's what they want. You guys could talk about it and then say, no, we'll give them 5 instead of 15 or whatever. Or we'll give them 20 instead of 15.
Right.
But, and then you can make that offer back and do that. So, but it will have to be in regular meeting. Any other questions on that? You think that works to wait and see?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But definitely, you've got everything set up, I think, where you don't have a lot of real tough questions to negotiate through in executive session because of your salary compensation you've already got. And the other benefits that are set up. But those would be the tough ones, the PTO, the car allowance, or what you're going to do with the vehicle. That will be one that they'll have some question on. Cell phone allowance is already set, I think, at 50, and which that's as typical. I think mine was 45, but that was set 24 years ago or something like that, but never changed. Those would be the ones that you just need to see what happens when we get a candidate. I mean, if you've got a candidate that's coming from Arkansas or something, you're going to want to set a little bit different than if you're getting somebody from Oregon down the street. There isn't really a good city down the street from here, but.
I just brought it up as food for thought because I think sometimes what can happen is you have a really competitive candidate. Those are like one-time expenses, instead of being a salary that is continuing and building. It seems like, to a lot of us, $5,000, that's a lot of money. But really in the grand scheme of things, if that's what lands the person that we really want, it might be money well spent. So I just think it's worth keeping, in the back of our
And
minds.
5,000 is a lot of money, but yet if you're moving someplace, it's not.
It's
Right.
not, yeah.
And that's why I say, it's like the candidate it may not be an issue. But if that's what it would require in order to land the candidate that we really need.
Flexible.
Right.
You're gonna see every candidate's gonna want a moving allowance,
Sure.
something for moving.
That would make sense.
Because city managers, they're leaving one place where they probably bought someplace or have housing, and then they're gonna have to do something here, because you have it that you need to be resident as soon as you can, so that'll be one. Want to move to the squishy stuff? Staff, you want to talk about these, your high priority items? Anybody want to?
Well, I'll just give a quick summary because so a couple weeks ago we met during our regular directors meeting and came up with this list. And coincidentally, I think we all had the same items for the most part, and I would imagine you guys will probably see a lot of overlap in some of the attributes that you would like to see. And so we broke these attributes up into 2 categories. One were ideas that we think the city manager shall have these attributes. And then there's a list of desirable. And a lot of those desirables we probably feel are shall haves, but we also wanted to be realistic that somebody's not going to come in with every single attribute. So, so that's kind of how we broke that out. we can kind of go through that if you want to, but the other piece that we discussed, and I just stuck it on the back end of this memorandum, that we feel is extremely important is when we get to the finalists, is we would like to have the opportunity for that finalist to come around and meet all of the departments, and to where we can actually get to meet them in a more candid, less formal environment where they're not putting on a show and trying to tell us what we want to hear and pretend. We want to know them for who they really are. And so we were thinking that kind of an environment, you just show up in jeans and and you go and you visit the department, you just chat it up and then we can kind of gauge whether or not this person is a good fit. Anyway, so that was important to us.
Well, I think it's important too, because I think a good candidate would do that automatically. They'd want to know what each department is doing, and to meet you,
Yeah.
get your input.
Yeah, and we just kind of felt like there's a lot of people that interview really well,
Right.
but they're not great people.
That's right.
And so that's why this is important to us.
And I would suggest that not just when you do the finalist interviews, if we bring you 4 or 5, and that be one of the pieces of that cycling through. That you find a staff member that is really good, that will take them around and show all of the different departments and what's going on. And then when we sit down and get reports from the panels, we're also getting a report from that staff person. How did they feel on the tours? What did they see? You're exactly right. That is the time when it's going to be a little more casual. They're going to let go. You're going to learn if they know what they're talking about on some things. You're going to learn if they have no idea and they've just been blowing smoke during the interviews. And so I think it's a really, really great piece of the interview panel process. And it also puts the candidates in a really great position to be able to say, what am I doing here? If all of a sudden they've learned this isn't what I expected, or they get really excited and do really well. So I would really strongly suggest that we work that into as one of the panels, because we've done that before where you've got a panel, you have the community and leaders panel and the department head panel, and then you have the tour group too. It does. I did it 26, 7, 8 years ago, and it was a lot of fun. I think that's where I shined better than in the interviews, was on the tour.
So Mike, do you think it's more valuable to have, that planned time? They're going to stop by and visit with you in the planning department and Chief Bell, please, and kind of do that individually that way? Or is it better to just, hey, we're going to give a tour of everything, but then later we're going to give a chance for all of our directors to sit down with that person at the same time? I mean, one of them is obviously a little more logistically harder to plan. Hey, we want them to tour the planning department, but we also need, you're going to want 5 or 10 or 15 minutes with that person to really kind of get to know them versus, we're going to plan an hour and a half, dinner meeting or something with all of you guys. And you have a little more time maybe, but maybe less one-on-one. I don't know, what's the best approach there? Do you have a suggestion?
I think it's kind of a good idea of going from, department to department, just like we did as a council. We got to go to each department. We got to see in your environment versus sitting somewhere else. You'll be able to see it and ask questions to them in your environment, not them being in their own environment.
Well, that was kind of our thought.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, we were just thinking there'd be 2 or 3 directors that would, essentially, it's a ride-along and ride with the one candidate, and you go visit. So rather than just coming to the planning department, I mean, it'll be, this is your hour at City Hall, and you get to kind of bebop around and kind of meet everybody, and everybody can kind of get a feel for that person when they're out of their environment a little bit of the interview. And they'll maybe head over to the parks and do that. And so we figure the chief will probably go because he'll interrogate him the whole car ride. And but anyway, that was kind of our thought was, 2 or 3 of the directors would ride along and then you can just kind of have casual conversation, chat stuff up and visit each department and having 2 or 3 directors as you're driving around, because you can drive through the community and then they get a feel for what our community looks like as well, where they're probably not going to get that driving around by themselves as they come for their interview. And so I just think it's very valuable, but I don't know if our desire and intention was to get together as a group of all of us in one collective meeting and meet, because I don't know if that's necessarily that comfortable environment.
Well, I thought
where we're gonna-
you were kind of talking about kind of what you did for all of us when we went to each department and we learned a little bit about that. This is me, if there's 3 department heads, I don't know if you would let your guard down. Do you know what I mean? But a one-on-one, doing a tour and saying, this is how this facility works, and then you will really know if the person knows what's going on. I kind of like the idea of what you did with us as a council. I don't know, I just thought it was really good because I've gained such great knowledge about the inner workings of the city and how it works and each individual, their jobs and everything. And I think that's valuable. I do like the idea of you driving them around and showing them all the different areas, but I don't know. Do you guys think that if they have 3, if they're gonna?
I personally.
I like that one-on-one.
I like the one-on-one,
I know
yeah.
when I first became on the council, I went to each department and just talked with them. To get to know what they were doing, just one-on-one, and that's what I would prefer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we're open to that. I think part of the idea was, as a board, we want it to be valuable for them as well.
Right.
And if you're driving around, I only know so much, but if Public Works, if you had Kyle riding along, he can identify all kinds of stuff that Public Works is doing in the community. Gary might have some input, Stu might have, so, and so we would have to kind of decide who would be the ride-along as opposed to just being a one person who's gonna chauffeur them
But I
around.
still would like the
But-
person to come visit each department and
One
talk to
by
them
one.
individually.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think, Mary Ann, that what we're getting at is that if we had a few directors that just help facilitate, because then you kind of stay on time, because the candidate doesn't have to put, where's the police department, where's
Well,
the,
that's- oh, yeah, I
they
understand
facilitate that, but then like whoever those directors might be, we show up at the library, that doesn't mean that the candidate and the library director can't have their time, because we're not, the other directors don't have to hover there,
Right.
but it's kind of an introduction, and it just keeps things on track. And consistency between, if we have 2 candidates that we do that, then we're kind of consistent with the way that we do it.
But isn't it just that the one person who's driving around, they could do it, just the one individual? And you guys could trade off as individuals, in the vehicles or whatever, I don't know.
You could always go from place to place,
Yeah,
one of the things we discussed was this Public Works, I can suck down 2 hours of their time, just go into my facilities alone. Whereas Stacy is like, hey, here's my office, this is where this is my spot. So, there could be different handoffs. There
Right.
could be, I drive them to my facilities and drop them off at the police station, show them
Yeah.
in, and once
Yeah,
Gary
right.
takes the
Yeah,
handoff.
like that.
he
That would
shows
be
off.
awesome.
And he hands
You
off at
create
the
an
library.
agenda.
yeah.
We're gonna go here and here, and you're gonna be with so-and-so for these hours. I mean, I think that's probably a good idea.
That's
I would
that's
have
good.
said like Stacy.
I don't know what our
would be
timing is, but
first contact anyway.
I hate to say, it, we're gonna have a lot more attractive community if they come here like in June than if they come here in August. We're brown and dry and hot and dusty, like
Excuse
if we
me,
can get,
counselor.
we can get these people in here.
That's
We can
true.
get these people in here prior to June 15th, like it goes green to brown that week, every year.
Sometimes it goes through July.
Oh, no, never to July.
Oh, yeah, it does. A couple times my dad came and visited.
July.
All right, we bring this back in here.
All right.
So if you're doing the tours, some department heads are probably gonna be involved in some of the panels. So we want the same people through all the panels. So maybe in some departments, it may need to be somebody else from that department. So when you go through the library, it might be an assistant, or it might be one of the librarians, or something like that. But somehow arrange that we really, to report back to the council, it probably should be one person saying, here's how the ride went. Here's what they said or asked questions, and they interacted. And then you might collect some information from the ones that they interact with in the departments and do that, and then report that back. So it's another tool for the council to use to make that decision. Did they fit? Yeah, it's a valuable idea.
So are you just saying, Richard, like one person will report about the whole thing?
About the whole tour for all of them, yeah. Because they'll be able to compare all of them.
That's true, but everybody feels things differently.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
So who do you pick? to be
Well,
that
and then
person?
that's what I'm saying, maybe just a little bit from everybody.
Yeah, you could get from the other departments, from the departments,
Yeah.
they could report report back to them.
Right, and I
Here's how
think-
we felt with this person.
Right, because I think that would be better, a better feel than just one person, because somebody could leave something out or something like that, yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, what you all think of these candidates matters, I mean, probably more to me than anything else.
Oh, I agree.
This is who you're gonna be working with.
Day by day,
You know, we don't have any say in your employment and what happens there, that's the manager. You know, we may have the final say in picking that person, but, you know, we like what you're doing. And so, you know, we want the kind of person that's gonna be a good, you know, a good report for you. So,
Well, I think what Dave's trying to say is, you guys are a great team, in the same sense you need a good quarterback. So if we don't pick the right one to run the team, you know, that you guys feel comfortable with, that does a good job, listens to you, and we need your input to help pick the right position. Because he will be, or she may get this position, and their job is to, you know, run the city. So we don't pick right, you know, I mean, that has happened in the past, and we don't want to see that again. So that's why we're doing what we're doing now, and I think by bringing you, the directors in here and listening to you, is going to be very helpful to help us make the right decision with it.
Because your information, how you perceive this person is extremely valuable to us. Each and everybody's opinion.
I mean, Kyle goes on to talk with Robert on what he does, we have no idea. We are not public works. We don't know what you do. You tell Robert, Robert, you know, brings that information to us, directs us the proper way, you know, what is the best avenue approach. That's why we need that person to have good knowledge. And I think your interview is a great idea, because then that, each one of you get to kind of score each person just from the information, you get to speak a little bit with them. That gives you an idea, hey, he does have knowledge. Hey, he's listening, you know. They might be throwing a show out, but at least this will give us a little more information and hopefully help us pick the right person.
I like what I see here. I mean, these are, again, likewise, a lot of the attributes that I would have included. The one thing that stands out to me, number two, the urban renewal districts. I mean, obviously, not every city has an urban renewal district. And so, you know, that to me is going to be a hard one. If we make that an absolute necessity, there frankly may be some fantastic candidates come through that have absolutely no experience with urban renewal districts. And Oregon runs those a little differently than Idaho does, or somewhere else that we may be pulling from. Our city runs it a little differently than other cities in Oregon, as I understand it. And so, you know, I think that's good, but that's also, to me, I look at that and I think that's not an essential. It's going to have to be there later on, but that may not be something that somebody comes in with that they already have. I don't know how others feel about that, but that's the one that stood out to me. I thought, if we're going to interview everybody and say, what do you know about Oregon's urban renewal districts? We may miss some fantastic candidates who know nothing about it, but could catch up to speed pretty quickly.
Oh, I agree that I don't think it's a high priority because of that very reason, but if it's listed somewhere in the brochure that you're gonna send, then it's up to that person to check into it. So has some knowledge of it.
They need to know that that's a critical part of what we do.
So we don't wanna say it's a high priority, but it has to be mentioned.
I would agree. I actually just took a renewal class yesterday. It was an hour and a half, and it was just this top of urban renewal. It's very complicated. And ours even seems a little more complicated than others, to be honest with you.
And I would go to the length of saying, you know, if somebody comes in and doesn't have that experience, that maybe that becomes a necessity for them. Like, this is contingent upon you taking some education to understand this, because you can't run this city if you don't understand how that's working. You know, we've seen issues in the past. This has been one of the hot button topics with our citizens who have, you know, in the past made allegations of mismanagement and things like that because they didn't understand the complexity. You know, there's a lot of history there. Whoever it is going to have to catch up on that history. But I think it's a hard sell to think that we're going to bring somebody in that understands all those nuances. Maybe I'm wrong, Richard. You can tell me. I don't know how many of these city managers come in here with a lot of urban renewal experience. But
There are some that have it, yeah, but you may end up with some that don't. And you want to make sure you have everything in place that if you find that person that just fits and you say, this is the one we want, you can make that decision easily. And maybe they don't have they don't have urban renewal, but they know some of the basic stuff, but they don't have any experience in it. Then you know where your action items are and your expectations are for them that you can lay out. But you will get some people with urban renewal experience, I would imagine.
I would also say, I think this probably comes just with the territory, but I did the new state required training last night.
Did you?
Yeah, the public
Oh my
law,
gosh.
public meetings law.
I've got
I
mine
won't
scheduled for
give you my
April.
opinion, yeah, have fun.
Yeah.
So, but I'm listening to that and I'm like, ooh, I'm really glad we have a city manager who like tells me, like, hey, don't do that. Because it's really easy to run afoul of Oregon law. I mean, it's really, really easy. Common sense things are apparently not common sense there. So whoever it is, I think, I'm really grateful that Robert has imparted information, constantly reminding us, hey, can't do that, can't do that. Whoever it is has got to come in with some of what is in there. Because it's not here.
Your two big points out of the four would be definitely the budget and finance and law. Honestly, I think that is your number one as a city manager. And then two, of course, HR and union negotiations. I mean, that's a big part of Robert's job when those come around, that you need someone good to be able to be on behalf of the employees and the city.
And they will be
he is a
doing it
mediator.
shortly after they
Yeah.
hire.
So I think those 2 points, of course, a great leader, we all want that, but those 2 points are the main ones I think we really need to focus on the new city.
Yeah. I also would like to have somebody that, just because we've done something the same way, I would like to have somebody to come in with new, fresh ideas. Because sometimes that might be what we need. It's so easy to go doing the same things all the time. But somebody with new ideas. And I like the one on the point 4, strengthen leadership and hold the staff and others accountable. It's kind of what we were talking about in our meeting with the schools and so forth. But I think that's great. And also somebody who is community minded. I think that is imperative for our community to grow and not to feel that there's a divide between the city and the community.
That's always been one of my top ones because they need people, a lot of people in town don't know who the city manager is unless that person is out in the public.
Right.
I have a question for the directors. You have number 4 listed as having a high level of integrity, leadership, and communication. All on board with that, but then you list again number 4 in desirable attributes as strong leadership and decision making, and number 5 is communication. Is there a reason that these 2 weren't just listed with number 4 on the highly desirable? Because to me,
Right.
communication is
It's major.
essential. If we don't know what people are thinking or doing, then it's hard to understand how to fix or adjust
Right.
or improve. So is there a reason that it was separated out? Did I miss something?
Nope. I don't think you missed anything. I think we just pulled the critical pieces out and said, we want these as essential.
Okay.
And the rest of it's a longer list.
I'm
Yeah.
happy with longer lists. I think the longer the list, the better refined the candidate, really. So if there's anything in 4 and 5 that you feel you would really actually like to see in those longer lists, I'm all for it.
We want all of these.
I mean, I'm on board.
I mean,
really love those.
honestly, we want all of these, but that's kind of how we broke it out, as these essentials are ones that for us, we think would be deal breakers.
I just wanted to highlight some of Denise's points. One of the things that we appreciate about Robert is his protection for you, all political influence, right? So I think it's really, really important for that person to be able to allow us to do our jobs, but also allow the council to weigh in on that, right? But not to have the council directly weigh in on our jobs, right?
Right.
So I think that's similar to some of your points. And I think it's a main theme with our conversations without you in the room. So I just wanted to just blow that door open. Yeah, full transparency, that's something we really value.
Well, and you need that. I mean, the reality is we may make certain decisions and they may be very public facing decisions. but the city runs on what you're doing.
You're doing it.
And we have very little insight into what the day-to-day operations of the city are. That's where you guys are the experts. You know, the city manager may be that point of communication. Yeah, there very much is, as you pointed out, there's a line that has to be respected there. We don't hire or fire directors. That is not the prerogative of the council in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
We may pick the person who does, but there needs to be an appropriate separation there.
It could just,
Yeah.
it could also come from the podium, right? It has to be, I don't know how many meetings I've heard Robert say, with all due respect, you're wrong, you know, or to set somebody straight, because that person in another very near community, I've seen public meetings go awry when there wasn't a professional manager to stop what I call misinformation and gossip. Because at the microphone or at the podium, people have an opinion. They always have an axe to grind when they're here, right? So I think it's imperative and very important that we have somebody that can be that professional influence without political influence in a public meeting or in a space where you may be influenced. If that's a false statement, somebody needs to call them out because you might not know it's false.
Right.
You might take that as gospel and then make a decision which is going to adversely affect the community and us, if that makes sense.
I might just offer to because I don't disagree with the notes about community involvement, and I think that's really critical. But I also think that it's really critical that we all keep clearly delineated in our minds that there's a difference between that and our city manager becoming political or being influenced. You are the political body. And I think that the city manager is a professional position, and, you know, that sometimes can be, even inadvertently, that line can be blurred a little bit. You know, if there's a lot of influence from the community, from certain segments, we shouldn't have our city manager be making, you know, decisions based upon that for political reasons.
Something that I didn't necessarily see here that I would include, maybe it fits within the professionalism and communication leadership, but something I very much admire about Robert is his feathers are not ruffled easily. And you have an even keel there. The boat just doesn't get rocked. And we need that. And, you know, the kind of person, like you said, who can sit here and listen to vitriol at that microphone that's directed at staff or us or them or whatever, and maintain composure and keep control of the meeting. That is, I don't know that you can overvalue that. You can have somebody who's good in a lot of other respects. They lose their cool in a setting like that, and it can blow up a lot of things pretty quickly. And so I would maybe just bring attention to that. I think it probably fits within a few of these, but maybe temperament and personality need to play a little bit of a role. And as I look at candidates, that's one of the things I'm going to be paying attention to. And as you talk about, like the ability to go out and spend some time in jeans and a t-shirt with these individuals, that's where you see that. A lot of people can put on a good face for an interview, maybe hold it for a few hours here and there. We need to have whoever it is around you guys long enough that someone gets some insight into what is this person's personality. You peek behind the covers, what do you see? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about character.
Character, yeah.
And that's what we were talking about in that informal setting is we'll be able to discern pretty quickly, you know, what kind of characters we're dealing with. A lot of times candidates, they're going to have great resumes in the public forum. You know, they may really wow, you know, the audience, but, you know, we conduct business, you know, to some may not understand this, but behind the curtains, it's still professional, you know, and that character is there. And so I agree with you, David.
And the ethics too. I mean, the reality is that corruption happens in positions like this. And that can be absolutely devastating and incredibly costly to a city and its operations. And so, you know, the integrity, that matters. Ethics matters. We're probably not, you know, imagine people we're polling from in this pool of candidates probably have proved their mettle in other positions that we'll be bringing them from. But you always want to be sensitive to that.
Of course, it's very important to have that person be have active listening, where he really listens to what the person is saying and understands it. And he doesn't put his own opinion before he hears you out.
Right. Well,
I
a good
think that's extremely
communicator.
important,
Good
that he actively listens and communicates back with you. Maybe, I don't care if he paraphrases it back or whatever, but that you feel like he or she is really understanding what you're saying.
This is great, because you've actually, I've got little question marks with some of these words, and you're filling in what those words mean for me, so perfect.
And another thing I'm looking for, I don't necessarily want somebody who's going to retire here. I don't mind them coming in for 5 or 7 years, giving us the best they can give as they move on to another position. I think sometimes that's good because then you get a turnover of ideas, because that person's coming in because they really want to make their mark. I mean, I'm not opposed to somebody else who's older than that, but I'm saying I'm kind of like that idea of having somebody come in 5, 7 years, maybe 10 years, and then a new person. I don't know how the rest of the council feels on that.
I 10 years.
Right?
I want to do a 5-year turnover. 10, maybe we can do 10.
Well, I know that.
I know.
The average is typically 5 to 7 years, and,
Yeah.
but, you know, you've had a great manager for 17,
Yes,
I
I
was
have.
one for 26. And so there are the odd ones. We're the odd ones.
I mean, I know that some people call it the Young Turks or whatever, you have lots of names for them, but
Yeah.
they kind of come in and give everything they can to make the city better.
Yeah, you're looking for someone that's coming in to make the city better and give everything they can, and with the expectation that something else may come along because I'm doing a great job. In comparison to somebody who's gonna come in for 5 years, and then they're gonna start looking right away
No,
without the intention to make this better.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
just filling
Yeah,
a spot
I
for
don't
5
want
years
that
to
kind of
get
person.
that on their resume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I hear what you're saying, Marianne, but I just wanted to verbalize that I think that we need to really be cautious about a candidate that has an incredible resume, they test super well, but why do they want to be here?
Oh, that's important.
And what I have seen, and you all, if you are aware of this or not, I'm not certain, we've experienced this multiple times at our fire department. We've hired people that are fantastic candidates, they have great, resumes, but oftentimes they're coming from, I'm not picking on any particular location, but they're coming from a location because this is a great place to retire. But they're retired on the job. And it's really destructive to the organization. And we've seen that in the fire department. And thankfully, Chief Cornford came back multiple times and he has really stabilized that. But I don't want to see that at the city level because that may cost you directors. And so that would, and it takes a long time to get out from underneath that. So I think we really want to be careful about why somebody wants to be here.
Well, I do want somebody who wants to be here.
Right.
But I really don't, I guess I'm saying that I want somebody who comes in who's innovative, who has new
Sure.
ideas,
Right.
who wants to give the very best and make the city good.
Right.
And therefore, they're not going to just look at it as, and they'll start looking elsewhere right away because they haven't done anything here.
Right.
And that's not good. I mean, their resume can't show that they've been here only 5 years and I'm looking again. So I guess I could say 7 to 10 years, but not 20 years necessarily.
So one of my questions for tomorrow for the stakeholders is going to be, why do you want to be here? Why are you here?
Right, right.
And so what is the answer to what's a good reason for the manager to want to come here?
Get to work with us.
Chief does.
They don't know that yet.
That's right.
That's what the door is
It's
for.
not all, it's not all humor though, because look,
Right.
we have a lot of stability in this community. The way that the city of LeGrand has been governed for a lot of years, when you look, just Google, pick up some media source, and it's not always that way. There's a lot of controversy and there's a lot of infighting that is so counterproductive. I mean, we got so much stuff to do day in and day out in our departments and what you guys do citywide. There's no room for that. And so we have stability. And that is, in my opinion, very marketable. That's a reason why somebody would want to be here. I mean,
You have a legacy here.
That's right.
In LeGrand, you really do.
We got to keep
That's-
it.
That's recognized throughout the state. So, I mean, that's why I'm excited to be a part of this, is because you really do have some assets that make it valuable for someone want to really truly come here for the right reason.
We're not broken.
Right.
And that's something that happens a lot when communities are looking for city managers. They're looking for somebody to fix all the problems that they have. I mean, we have problems. We need to fix our streets. We have all of those things. You know,
911's understaffed.
we have real things that every community has, but we don't have fractures that are insurmountable, that great candidates would just be like, I can go somewhere else because I don't need
I
that.
hear what you're saying, and that's why we hired Robert to come in. Because the city manager we had before was not that kind of person. He was not able to pull this together. And I don't think many of you were here maybe with, under some of those other people.
One,
Yeah, some
I
of you
was.
were- yeah. And you know who I'm talking about. There were several of them that just were, and Robert came in, that's what we wanted. We needed somebody to come in and say, the city needs some consistency, some guidance that will pull it together. And look what you guys are. You are there.
I think as a community member, what I really love about the city is the privilege that we have in this town. The ability for our kids to mostly safely walk to school, because there's sidewalks for them to walk to school. And when you are living in a larger city, or, this isn't against you, it's just, they built.
Dropping $1 million
No,
for the
listen to me,
sidewalks this year.
They built a school where there were no sidewalks. That's not your problem, right? Like, so now we're trying to make up for it now. So, was that you? That wasn't you.
I was waiting for it.
No,
Yeah.
there's a privilege of being able to allow your kids to walk to the library and enjoy the services, to go to the pool, to go to the parks. Like, there is a privilege that we have, and we're like the city of trees every year because we care. And we want the place to be comfortable as possible for our community members. And I think that I have gone away and come back several times. I grew up in LeGrand and I've come back many times because there is that privilege that just isn't available in other places. And I don't know how you would say that in a nicer way, because privilege always comes across as, yeah.
But you
it is
feel
a privilege.
safe here. And you don't feel like, okay, I moved from Ontario to here, and I had somebody draw my blood today that's from Ontario, and I heard a lot of things, and it's scary. And I'm glad the Lord blessed me to be here. So I don't know. This is just okay. My dad's from California. Okay, he would come here, and I would have other relatives come here, and he goes, "There's just a peaceful feeling." He goes, "It just feels good here." You know, compared to where, and he's up in the mountains with 7 acres, but yeah, but you just got a good feeling. I've gone away and come back and drive down Maine, and I just feel like I'm home. It's such I can't describe it, but it just feels good here.
I suspect, I'm not giving crooks any ideas, but I suspect if you poll people in the community, there's a substantial portion that still don't walk their homes and still don't walk their cars. That's the
Right.
kind of community we live in, for better or for worse. There's a level of trust that doesn't, I think, often exist in a community this size. We're a small, medium-sized town. There's a very much a connected mentality here. You know, we learned that when we moved here 12 years ago from Kansas City area. It was like, wow, it feels like a small town, even though we're a full-service city. I think you talk about the people, though, Chief Bell. I mean, I imagine that this would have to be very fulfilling as a city manager to have you as a group of directors to work with. But not only that, we don't have a contentious council. We just don't. I mean, for the most part, like every person who sits on this dais and has for some years has been a pretty reasonable person. We don't have a lot of people out here grinding their axe, you know, in the middle of a council meeting and you know, threatening the city manager. That's not the culture here. And we've been fortunate enough to maintain a fairly good sense of community within the city operations. Again, I look at other cities and it is not that way. I mean, the worst of our council meetings are pretty mild and tame compared to what happens in a lot of other communities. You know, so as much as you talk about a level head, somebody not ruffling feathers, I mean, that's on this level compared to what probably a lot of these candidates have had to deal with in other communities. I remember talking with Robert about some of the prior communities he was a part of and him expressing how grateful he was generally for the council that he works with. Again, it's not always that way. So I would think that some of those things would be professionally attractive to a city manager beyond what the city and the community offer outside of that. This is a beautiful area. I mean, we are home to recreation galore here. It's a great place to raise a family. There's a lot of things about LaGrange. We are largely undiscovered as a gem within the state of Oregon. And I think people who come here recognize it quickly.
I'll just add, we don't have a contentious staff either. When we were faced with some budget decisions, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, we sat in a room upstairs, we talked about it together, we worked it out on the whiteboard together, and it was tough, right? Nobody likes to have that conversation, but nobody was like, screw Gary, he doesn't get, you know, it was just.
They waited until I left for that.
But you're right. It's our culture.
Yeah, I think so.
And we see that, but you know, I mean, you look at why somebody chooses to work for any organization, and culture has become a preeminent reason for so many people. You're in the HR room, and you see this. That is why somebody leaves. That's why somebody else comes and chooses to stay. And I think we may not sell everything about our community, but we have culture in spades. And that is a point that we need to make. For anybody that wants to come and work here, is that this is a professionally fulfilling and satisfying place to be. And somebody who is a good culture fit here is going to find what they have dreamed of in our community.
And I think another attraction has got to be, if you all have initiatives, we all have initiatives, if this person can drive that bus, they're going to accomplish so much quicker than if there were contentious conversations.
Right.
It just seems like it'd be so much more fulfilling because you can accomplish so much more in a quicker amount of time.
Well, it is a great community. We moved here in 75, and it's a peaceful community. And it's so easy to get involved, too easy to get involved. Or maybe somebody just can't say no.
It's too easy to run for council and get a seat.
It's not that easy, come on now.
Who do we let up here anyway?
So you want from us?
It's just a great community, and I think people.
Let's take, we'll come back and do something positive, but let's touch on what are your challenges? What are the things you're facing in the next 5 years that are going to try the culture, that you need to really work together on, that you see coming forward?
I see budget as always being the number one.
Revenue.
That's why I think should be our number one strength that we're looking for. And that always has been, and it always will be, because we don't ever have enough money to do everything we need to do. So we don't have the right person to budget and help us guide us through, we're gonna be growing.
So I guess that what that's telling me is the person is going to have to be someone who can really help and assist not only the department heads, but you as a council prioritize and be able to make happen what you can with what you have.
Yes.
Right.
My understanding is that when Robert came in here, the city was not in a very healthy position financially, and that required some tightening of the belt.
Yeah, it did.
We've been very, very fortunate that his financial acumen has put the city in a position of strength, frankly. You know, I think there's always desires and pushes to move past the budget restraints, but, you know, again, that is frankly a very core strength that Robert has brought to the city, is the financial stability. But I think because of that, there's a strong desire to maintain that.
But I also think we need to look at the fact that we need to bring in businesses. I think that's a strong, I mean, we don't have a lot of things like, we travel quite a bit and I see small towns like ours that have more shopping, more businesses to employ the people here. And I think that's something it's always been our challenge here.
Well, that's also a challenge because where we're at.
I know.
This day and
that's what I'm
age,
saying.
it's easier for someone to go on their phone and order
Oh,
what they
I know,
want
I
right
know.
there.
I'm just saying, but it is a challenge that we've always
Marianne, when
had.
you say businesses, are you thinking like corporate, are you thinking mom and pops, are you thinking
I'm thinking
everything?
both.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have both.
I'm not thinking, I don't want to become a band.
That you-
That's not what I want.
You've got some really great, I spent an hour walking 3 miles because my wife was home walking. We usually walk each night. So she walked at home and I walked here. But I walked 3 miles around downtown and around town. You've got some beautiful businesses in the community that I'm going, wow, this is amazing that how nice they look and everything. So how do we don't want to say maintain. I don't want you getting a manager that's coming in to maintain. That's kind of a negative sounding thing. I'm thinking that we put in there a visionary to continue with the process of how do we get more business? How do we improve? How do we leverage the urban renewal district to continue to make those improvements on all your buildings downtown and using those upper floors and that you're doing, but that continue that process and maybe find ways to tweak it a little bit to even make it better. Is that kind of what you're trying to say
Yeah,
there?
yes, just,
It's strategic growth.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the rallying cry is that you don't want to become Ben, but do we need to write in there like Ben city managers need not apply?
I don't want that. I'm just saying, I personally don't want to see us grow like that.
Joke.
That big.
But I don't know how many times I've heard that in this community in the last day. Like it's like a motto around here. It's a
Well,
funny
that
thing.
is. And then you'll hear the other people who say, I don't want to see any improvements. I don't want it to grow in any way.
Yeah, there's the
Kind of
people like
don't
that.
want to be like Eugene, it's
Yeah.
you want to maintain the small town charm and robust community,
That has,
peaceful.
that's unique to
Okay.
come here.
But still grow a little bit.
Yeah, if you don't, it'll stagnate, it won't, you've got to have growth. And
Yes, you do.
I think another upcoming challenge is infrastructure and funding that. We talked about gas tax at one point, revisiting that sooner than, when they get hired. So that's gonna be
Stu's just over here stealing thunder.
Yep,
Yeah.
Actually, to build on what he pointed out was, currently, the streets are being, pumped full of life with our ARPA funding, but in 2 years, that's gone. We're back to business as usual, and we haven't solved the problem of long-term, how are we gonna keep these streets where we want them to be? So,
Get on the stump trail for your gas tax.
yeah, next year.
then everybody in town buy electric vehicles and you won't be able to
Electric
get.
vehicles are the worst things for the street.
They are, they're
heavier,
heavy.
high friction,
They
destroy
pay no gas
pavement.
And they pay no gas tax.
Us gas people pay for all the roads.
You got a tire tax coming here, right?
No, don't start about the tire tax. It's research is all it is. It's nothing to help with the roads, nothing to do. It's for their research on pollution. I'm sorry, but I am very, I'll just stop that out. Why'd you have to push my button?
So we don't have, candidates cannot support the tire tax.
And you don't have gas tax at all?
No gas tax, no local gas tax.
No local.
Another one that I know Gary will appreciate as well is we do have some city facilities that are aging and are going to be replacing or something new.
Yeah, I think on that level, really, there's two key things
Already?
that I think are gonna be challenges. One is revenue generation. I think we just have to realize things are gonna be more expensive. We've seen that even in the 3.5 years I've been here, we've looked at projects that were, would have cost $2 million when I got here, and that price just keeps going up as we, don't have the resource to do the project now. They get more expensive. So I think that idea of we've got to find ways to enhance revenue, but we also have to realize that we're also going to have to probably figure out strategically, how do we implement some of the things that were being mandated to implement, particularly in some of the housing implementation strategies, some of those things. We've got to create some new tools to implement some of those mandates. Some of that's on the revenue side. Some of it's just a strategic tool. But I think just being able to think in terms of both of those sort of resource development is a bigger challenge. I think the other challenge that I think is really critical, it's kind of the elephant in the room. But the fact is we live in a blue state, on the red side of that state, in a very contentious political environment right now. We still have a county commission that has to meet once a quarter to talk about whether we should be part of Idaho. So we need somebody who, I think going back to your comment, can really be level-headed, unflappable, sort of, let's not be in the politics. Let's focus on what's the strategic implementation of what we need to do for our city. And kind of operate out of the politics to the extent that we can. Does that make sense, or is that just me?
No, you're right, and that's a unique thing here because we live in a community that frankly is quite more diverse politically than a lot of our neighbors.
Yes.
And whoever the city manager is going to have to navigate at some level that, or at least, be able to maintain some composure there.
Yeah.
It's just reality of where we live. It's a university town on a rural area. So,
But it's not a negative thing.
it's not a negative
It's not
thing. No, in
negative. It adds
fact,
to
I
our
think
culture.
it's quite a positive thing. It's
But
nice
I think
to
it
have.
is just a challenge as we look at all of the sort of challenges there, maintaining that even composure, being able to sort of work in that realm, but stay really focused and strategic on the implementation of what's really critical at the city level, and not kind of get sucked into some of the other more contentious issues.
Real quick, how much longer do you think we're gonna, because the reason I'm asking, some people might need a moment to take a break.
It's completely up to you.
Okay.
If we're at a point where, and I've got some great stuff, and I think I've got some ideas that, and how.
No, we wanna give you everything you need, I mean, we're paying for your services.
That's right,
We wanna give you all the info we can, but I mean, if we're thinking another half hour, we've been in here for 2.5 hours, so I wanted to suggest maybe a half a break for everybody, or just stand up and walk around break. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you have more from us, I mean, definitely, we're not pushing or rushing you.
No.
Like I said, we're paying you to do a job,
Right.
so we want to give you all the insight that you need from
Yeah.
us, so that way you can do your job.
Yeah, I'm actively listening to what you're saying and everything, and that's, the conversation is great, and I'm glad I'm not having to poke you with a stick to get stuff out of you, and that's really nice. It's the culture, and
Yeah,
that's,
it's our golden.
that is, I think it's when you think you're done. I mean, if I start seeing repetitive stuff, I'm gonna say, hey, we're getting boring now.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do have a question. When a candidate does come, we can ask them specific questions as well, correct?
Right.
Okay.
So when, changing gears here, then when we do the panels, and what we'll do is, we'll put together the profile,
Okay.
and it's a really nice brochure. It's got we'll have beautiful pictures. We got beautiful pictures that were sent in already. And we'll compile this information in the profile, and we'll send that out. We'll get applicants in. We'll screen those applicants first. I'll go through them and interview. We'll screen out the bad ones, and I'll probably interview somewhere, depending if we've been getting about 23, 26. We got city manager one, I think got 30. Finance directors, we're seeing 2, 3, but the city managers are starting to pick up a little bit. We're actually starting to see some federal employees applying as well now for positions. So, which is an interesting situation, but I'll interview those and probably knock them down to 10 or 8 that would be, here are the ones that are really good that are recommended, and here are some that meet qualifications and I think you might want to talk to maybe if you want, but are not as good as these others. And, and then the rest will be just sitting off to the side until you say, yeah, let's do those. And so we'll bring you, and hopefully that give you something like 5 to go through the process where you would interview. And we'll help you put the questions together. You can come up with your own questions as well. You just can't ask certain illegal questions. And the same with the other boards, the other panels would do that. And some may be the same questions in some of the panels, which is fine. And then you'll evaluate that based on the input you get. So definitely you'll have some questions that you can ask. I like to do questions, that get a conversation started, so that you're not necessarily just going one bung and asking, why are you applying? How this about you, and have you had this experience? Can you add? Can you, those kind of things. But trying to get some conversation going with them, so you get them into a mode where maybe they'll drift into who they really are, rather than trying to answer the questions what they think you want, and go that route. So your questions should be things that are going to spark a conversation. And feel free when you're asking those questions that if something pops up in a question, if one of the counselors asks a question and they give an answer and you say, I want to know more about that, ask, get more. And by all means, do that. And the same with the panels. I mean, we want you to feel completely comfortable. When we're done, you have to be comfortable with who you want to hire. I mean, if you go through them, you say, none of them rang the bell, then we'll go back out. You've got to be happy. This is a hard job. This recruitment is a hard process. You don't want to mess it up. We'll put the pressure on you. Don't mess this up. Because you've got a great community and you pick the wrong person, you can mess it up. Now you're going to have nightmares tonight when you go home.
We've done that.
But, you don't pick somebody because, well, that's the best we got. Don't settle. By any means.
I just have one more challenge to lob in before I forget, which is relationship with the university. It's a struggle for us as a community, as two agencies. It's I was shocked at how divided. I grew up in a town with a small university, small rural town just like this, and they were hand in glove. The university needed things, the city made them happen. We don't do that for whatever reason.
The college really seems to be focused just on the college issues. I said the college just seems to be focused on the college issues and so forth. I mean, that's one thing we've tried when I was there at the college, try to bridge that gap, and they're concerned about enrollment. They're all this extra stuff that is, going on, and plus too, we got to, that's true. And see, they just got another new president, and they kind of go through them pretty quick, and so forth. So,
it's a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge.
Richard, as you talk about, strengths of our community again, I think that's actually one of them, though, is where we are a university town.
Yeah.
I think that's a big deal for on the size. The other thing, and I don't mean to necessarily disagree with you, Marianne, but I think, as we look at somebody, I think it's a selling point to say, our prior city manager has been here for 17 years. I mean, I don't know how often that happens. I can't imagine that's all the time. Yeah, I think you said average 5 to 7 years, something like that. So, I mean, again, to me, that speaks volumes as to the level of support that is also provided for that position when it's the right person. So,
and there's also the opportunity for that to be a negative thing.
Is there? Yeah.
Because in many cities, somebody's been there for a long time, the next city manager is a very short time. And so you, the community, need to recognize that when you select a person as the candidate, you select a new manager, that is a new manager. You don't compare it to previous managers. This is your manager you selected. You picked these characteristics because you wanted them. Don't evaluate the new manager based on the previous managers or manager. Be very careful, and that's one of the things we want to try to do in the discussions is we don't talk about, well, the previous manager did this and I really liked it. No, we don't want to do that. We're not evaluating the previous. We're moving forward. How do we build? What are the things that the new manager is going to have to address? And so that's a real important piece that the community needs to grab onto and say, we've changed gears and things may change, but we need to move forward and not department heads and council, you know, hey, they come in and they say, we want to do our agenda memos this way. And okay, and maybe that's a better way. And try it and not be reluctant to try new things and move forward and accept those. And, you know, maybe the new manager will come in and will sit quietly for a few months and nothing will happen change-wise, but then gradually things will happen. So, you know, it depends on what happens there. But you have to be aware of that change that needs to happen.
I think something that is important then as we're going through this interview process is the Grand tends to have, as a community, a knee-jerk reaction to change, a negative knee-jerk reaction. And so if we are moving forward, we have to be really clear about why, like what things we really do want to maintain, I think. I just feel like that's really important so that as a community, that knee-jerk reaction doesn't happen. It's already starting to happen when you talk to people out there, right? They're already starting to have a knee-jerk reaction. So just those things that are super important, like the even keel, like that has to be something. So I think if we're really clear about what has to be there, I understand these high priorities, but I want to move some of these lower priorities to the high priorities because of that reason.
Yeah. So I think one of the other strengths that I see from a city manager recruitment opportunity is, I think Councilor Glade kind of hit it on the head when he was talking a little bit about culture and talking about sort of some of the diversity in our community. But among that, we also have a really engaged community. And I mean, I see community members all the time who are stepping up to serve on committees, and I see projects like the pump track, and I mean, folks in the community are really engaged in helping create new opportunity and see projects come to fruition. And I think, you know, that to me is really, that's a big plus as a city manager, as a member of the city team, knowing that when there are good projects out there, there's a community engagement level that I don't typically see in a community our size.
Agreed. Even volunteerism isn't as dead here as it is in other places.
Yeah.
How are you staffing your committees and stuff? Are staffing the city committees, is that difficult? Do you have at times?
But it's pretty good.
Fairly well, it's just, there's times that's just not what we build.
Yeah, I feel like most of the commissions do okay, but I think that is to some extent just a change in how people volunteer. You know, we used to like volunteer for a board or a committee. And we see, particularly post-COVID, a lot more volunteer engagement that's more task-focused, project-focused, rather than meeting and committee-focused. So I think that's a challenge we all face.
If you want to stop now, we can. I've got a lot of stuff here that I've made notes and stuff on, and I think we've got some stuff to do a pretty good profile. If there is anything else that you want to add, give me a call, text me, email me, and we can do it and put those in or add that too. Or
Do we have your information?
yeah.
Okay, so email it. Okay, good.
Yeah, good. And what we'll do is we'll try to get you a draft for you to look at and just
okay.
kind of look at and do before you go to an official action on it and do that. Now, timeline-wise, do you want to trying to look at the time and replacement and getting the new manager on I think we're trying to get that so that we can have them start sometime in August and be with Robert for a period of time before he leaves. Does April, and we'll talk about this tomorrow a little bit more in the kickoff meeting with the timeline, but if April, your April meeting works, that's when we would plan on having the final draft of the profile for you to approve. If that doesn't work tomorrow in our meeting and we need to do it a little earlier, we may be asking to, hey, let's see about meeting sometime in late March or something to just go over the profile and approve it so we can get that out the door. Personally, I kind of like the April 2nd because then the profile will go out the door the end of that week. And I'll be in Jacksonville, Florida, from the 15th to the 26th with my new grandchild. And so it'll work perfect because all the applications will be coming in then and I can do that from anywhere in the world on my computer and review those. And I don't have to, and then I'll be doing the interviews when they get back from that. So, but otherwise we can flex that a little bit and play with that, so.
April's great just because the last week of March is spring
It's
break
spring
for
break.
every community in the valley.
Yeah.
So
And everything
people-
stops unless
Yeah.
you're going.
it's the very first time that I've ever known that to happen from the college to the public schools.
So
Well,
with
thank
that,
you very much. This was very helpful. It was a pleasure meeting with all of you and hopefully get to see more of you tomorrow. And yeah, if you come up with anything else tomorrow, grab me because I'll be here floating around somewhere. So,
Well, we appreciate it.
No,
And I
thank you.
appreciate each one of you directors staying. It's quite later than we thought. But we appreciate everybody, and with that, I will adjourn the work session. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, that's one. Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Are we 9 AM in the conference room?
I'm in the end state.